youth pastor, worship pastor, young adults pastor here at Word of Grace. For those of the few of you who don't know you, I know we got at least one first-time guest, so I got to make sure I do all the introductions. It's all for you. No, but I've been here for a pretty long time, not as long as some people here. Some people have been here for yeah, that's a good word, forever. We won't say how many decades. But I've been here for, since I've been 10, and I'm 31 now, so it's been a while. But I kind of been specializing more in the young adults and youth category. And so today I'm going to give a message, and I'm going to preface why and talk about why. My message is going to be somewhat geared towards them, but it's going to also be relevant to all of us. It's a very important message. I would say it's more important because of its lack of exposure maybe and lack of discussion, as some things get discussed more than other things in the church globally overall. And so I'm going to talk about some things, but I want to preface here with why I care about the millennial generation, the Gen Zs. By the way, millennials are going to be in their 40s in 2021. Okay, they're not the next generation. Actually, they're this generation now. I think people are like, what? They're going to be in their 40s already? Holy cow! But there's a very big discussion that goes on in the church, and that's about the millennial generation. And it's that the church there's kind of two sides of the same discussion. It's the church has failed the millennials, or the millennials are the problem, and they won't go to church. And there's kind of these two discussions going on. They're entitled and they're this and that, or the church is like, we need to figure out what we're doing, why we can't get them. And so there's two sides of this discussion, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the one. Basically, I want to walk us into today's topic. We're going to start from about a mile out and walk us right in, okay? So the church decided, those who decided to take responsibility for the millennial generation and the younger generations, this is Gen Z, and even some of the other ones, some of the younger people, they took responsibility, and they said, what should we do? What can we do? What can we change? And they started to change things, but I'm not sure they always changed the right thing. They became humble enough to admit that there was a problem, but they didn't always go far enough. And so what the church did is they changed their music. They changed the messages were really funny now. Man buns, skinny jeans, coffee shops, And they changed these things. And they thought, well, now the millennials will come. And I think the millennials, they showed up, and they're like, this is cool. And then they left. And they're like, what? I could go to Starbucks and get the free Wi-Fi, and I could hear a comedian that'd be funnier than that pastor. I can see man buns and skinny jeans there for sure. And I don't have to pay tithes. So I'm just saying, there's kind of these attempts. And there was a noticeable attempt by the church, and other churches have figured out some other ways. But what happened was they started changing their advertisements, and they started changing not just the advertisement, but they made gimmicks to try to draw people in. Okay? And again, this is all preface. This is all to get us there. But they tried to make gimmicks and advertisements. Well, that works to an extent if you have a good product, a product that people want. But if they don't want your product, you ever see the advertisements for something and you're like, yeah, but it's got 1-star rating. Nobody's going to actually want this. You can advertise it all you want. There's on Facebook, you see stuff advertised, and then you go look at the reviews and you're like, oof, yeah. But glad I checked because it looked really good. And then and the person's like, it exploded in my pocket. And you're like, well, that's not good. And so the church kind of did this and trying to fix their advertisement stuff, but the product or what they had to offer somehow did not resonate with the millennials and the younger generations. And it's ironic because what were they looking for? What are young people looking for? I mean, they're on the cusp of life, cusp of getting a career, figuring out their career, trying to move out, mom's house, trying to get out. And they're looking for something life-changing and something meaningful. And the church has the single most life-changing, most meaningful thing in existence, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. Essentially, they have Jesus. And it's like, well, what the heck? We have it. And you're looking for answers, and yet here's the answer, but And it's almost as if the answer maybe was bigger, that Jesus may have been bigger than a lot of the churches have expressed, just how big Jesus is. And I'm going to explain why that's happened. But there's a kind of a notion, and Pastor Dave's talked about this a little bit, but millennials, they hear with their eyes. Okay? Millennials, the generation, and I think the Gen Z too, you hear with your eyes. You want to hear something? You better see it. And so, the pastor will get up, and he'll preach his guts out about how Jesus is this and that, and they need to repent and be born again and this and that and the other thing. And then they hear them off to the side yelling at their wife, spiritedly. And they see it, and so what they hear is hypocrite. Even though it didn't change the validity of the gospel at all. That's listed for 2,000 years. That argument's going to be 2 minutes, right? But they see it and they hear it in that term, and so they reject it. And that's why it's such a big deal when people say, oh, the church is judgmental. It's because that's what people see. And I know the church is not predominantly that way. It just seems to be a squeaky wheel, gets the oil, so to speak. The loudest person in the room. It's not everybody, but it seems like it's everybody because they're the loudest. And so this has kind of crept in, and there's been some problems in the church that have come through. But today I want to really talk about one of them specifically, but there are other issues that have gone this way. One of the things I personally think, this is not just my analysis, this is professional analysis in the field, but one of the things I think is a problem is it's way too easy to become an ordained minister. If it was as easy to become a plane pilot as it is to become an ordained minister, there'd literally just be like Armageddon out there every time you drive. It'd be like, what's today's weather? Oh, it's 70 degrees, cloudy, 10% chance of plane fall. All right? And I think that's scary when you realize people put their lives in the hands of some of these ministers who really, they just buttered up a pastor for a long time and he kind of signed them off. It's scary because they're guiding people's lives. I'm not talking about people who have their doctorate and stuff like that. Like Pastor Dave put in work. Just go back in his office and look at all the things on the wall. But I'm talking about just in general. Right? To become a minister, it's very, very easy. And that's a problem. I think that's a problem. But the problem I want to talk today about is confirmation bias. Because this is going to bring us right into what we're talking about. I have a slide for it if you got it. Confirmation bias. If you've never heard of confirmation bias, it's the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs and or theories. Okay? This is, and again, this is not just me, this is other analysts in the field. Okay, confirmation bias is when someone wants to go to church, they only want to hear what they already know. Well, that doesn't happen here at all. Not a word of grace. I've literally heard somebody, and this is I'm just paraphrasing, and this is in hearsay over here. I heard someone kind of talking. I think it was the Pastor Dave or someone else who preached, and they were like, yeah, that was nice, but I like when you preach about the other thing. And I'm like, well, who are you? Do you say what you like, but it's like if you veer off and it's something that they don't know, something new, we don't want that. I just want to come and hear what I already know, so it makes me feel like I'm more intelligent. And this is in every aspect of life, by the way. It's not just in church. This is a thing amongst many people. And so people come to church all over the world, all over the states especially, and they say, hey, pastor, tell me what I already know. All right, don't challenge me. Just tell me what I know. Don't teach me something new, please. Please don't teach me something new. I don't want to feel stupid, like I didn't know it. And don't you dare, pastor, bring any correction to my life. Don't you dare try to change any of my habits. Don't start preaching Jesus in a way that makes me uncomfortable. Even though pretty much every time Jesus spoke, people started feeling uncomfortable. Ignore that. Don't let it resonate through me. And honestly, what happens is people go from being disciples, where they should be, to dictators of how they think the church should run. And so you're not a disciple, a sheep, or a follower when you become that. you kind of become narcissistic, and it would even, I would argue, reject what Jesus would bring, because he would bring challenge to our lives. And ironically enough, I think one of the problems with some places, some churches, and some Christian groups is there's not enough challenge in them. I think young people, specifically, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think they're looking for a challenge. I think they know, and they want somebody to tell them, hey, grow up. Because listen, and this is, oh boy, I'm already going off. All right, it's okay. In a generation that has severely lacked fathers, to the point of it's very acknowledged amongst social sciences, this is an issue, a problem. They're looking for that figure to say, hey, son, you got to get it together, man. Figure out what you want to do. You want to get her pregnant? You better take care of her. You don't just run away. Come on. And I really do think that as sensitive as people say they are, I think they're really looking for it. I think they're just waiting for everybody's like walking on eggshells around, and they're like, come on, hit me. Especially the men. The boys, whatever you call them. But I really think that's part of it. And so this, what happens though, is in this confirmation bias place, there's no challenge because everybody's hearing what they already, and then there's also pastors that like to preach on their favorite things, and that's universally true. That's fine. But churches become echo chambers. They become places where, it's the greatest hit of the 90s. The church becomes the greatest hits of the 90s. And a millennial walks in and is like, yeah, but I have a new problem that's relevant today. A Gen Zer is like, I have a social media problem, and it's, well, that's fine, but we're we're playing Bon Jovi on repeat. All right, you don't, no, none of that new stuff. All right, and I'm not talking about music, obviously. And so I think that that's one of the reasons I really wanted to start Upraise, and I'm fumbling my way through trying to figure out what they really are looking for. And as we go on and I look at more stuff, my conclusion is becoming, I think what has happened is we tried to make the gospel easy to accept, okay? But I would argue now, I think the gospel is never meant to be accepted. The gospel is meant to be desired. Imagine marrying somebody and them saying, I accept you. How well you think that's going to go? Where's that desire? Where's that flame? And the message and the gospel that Jesus brought was absolutely desirable. It was absolutely desirable. It was people were running to it, risking their lives to get there. And so what I think is, I think that what drew a lot of people in, it was enticing, it had teeth, it had grit, it had challenge. And so that's one of the reasons I really brought out this whole thing. But this confirmation bias is going to walk us right into what I want to talk about specifically today, okay? And so I have a list, all right? And we can just put that list up now, and I'm going to walk us into that too, okay? Don't read the list yet. Should have put it up maybe. But confirmation bias done to the church overall, here's what it's done. It's created a hierarchy of theology, meaning some theology is more important than other theology, okay? So some issues seem more relevant than other issues. It doesn't matter what Jesus said, necessarily. It just, overall, it's created a hierarchy, and not just in the church, but in the person, in the individual. When we're only looking for things we already know or we like or we agree upon, what happens is we create what's important. We create our own little hierarchy of what's important. Forget what Jesus said, okay? And so I have a list up here, right? A list up here. Okay. So these are the disciplines of Christianity. Pretty settled upon. Some of the biggest disciplines of Christianity. Meditation, prayer, fasting, study, as studying the Word. Simplicity, solitude, submission, service, confession, worship, guidance, and celebration. And we could do a year-long study on this. And here's why I'm talking about this. Because in a hierarchy, it says, hey, this one's more important, that one's more important, and those other ones, we don't need them. Okay, so I'm going to do a little exercise. This is, rhetorical exercise, there's the word. Look at this list, and just take a stab in your own mind. What do you think are the 3 or the 4 at the top of the hierarchy of church disciplines? What do you feel like if you went into a church and asked the church or asked the pastor or asked the congregation, what are the most important ones here? What do you think the answers would be? I think it's pretty clear. There might be some discrepancy, but I have a feeling that 3 or 4 of them are going to rise right to the top immediately. I bet prayer is on that list. Because if you don't put prayer on this list, you're a heathen. Okay, yeah, prayer, that's it. I would say prayer, studying the Word. Yeah, see, you're right there with me. Studying the Word and worship. I would argue maybe in some churches, service is up there, okay? But I would say that definitively prayer, study, worship, and maybe service are just, they're the top of the hierarchy. These are the ones we're going to talk about at church. These are the ones you're going to hear. Pray, worship, right? And maybe, if you get really spiritual, fasting. You might get in there. But it's always a mix of prayer and worship, right? Prayer, worship, studying the Word. You got to study the Word. You got to study the Word. Okay, these are all things. And this is what the church has predominantly risen to the top. And none of these are bad, by the way. I'm not discrediting any of these. But what I'm saying is some of these might be more important to specific generations because of the symbolic diseases and troubles they face. All right, here's the first aid kit of Christianity and how to walk. All right, and prayer is great, right? No argument from me, but it might be like the gauze, and it doesn't help necessarily fix an infection, right? You can wrap it up, but it doesn't stop the infection from spreading necessarily, right? So you see what I'm saying? Like this is Jesus' plan for Christians. All of these are talked about in repetition in the Bible, and they're all good. But I ask the question, what do you think is the most important to a generation that is running at breakneck speed, juggling just about everything they could possibly handle, being constantly connected, being constantly in social circles, being constantly driven, constantly checking themselves, constantly trying to put a face out there, put a facade out there. It doesn't just stop at school. It doesn't just stop at work, but it comes home and you got to keep it going on social media and you got to keep it going on text messages. You got to keep it going on comment sections and this and that and the other thing. And it's just juggle. Okay? And that's what I want to get to today. Because I think there's 2 that I'm going to bring out that I think the church should be very concerned about with the younger generation. That's you guys back there and a couple other ones. But I want to talk a little bit about this chaos for a second. There's a YouTube, I guess it's a video, but it's an interview, okay? And it's a guy named Simon Sinek, and he's talking about millennials in the workforce. And he brings up technology. And I'm going to paraphrase what he talks about millennials and technology, okay? And I think it's going to be extremely valuable to what we're talking about. He talks about technology. He says, engaging with social media and cell phones release a chemical called dopamine. Ever hear of dopamine? All right, it feels good when you get a response from somebody, or a like, right? Or a subscribe if you're out there, okay? We count the likes and we check the messages. And when we do, you get a hit of dopamine. Okay? You get a hit. It's just like hitting a drug. You get a hit of dopamine. All right? And so dopamine here is the same chemical that brings us into cigarettes, alcohol, gambling. All these are legitimate things that cause addictions, right? Alcoholism, right? Addicted to cigarettes, or even gambling addiction. Gambling addiction is recognized, right, as an addiction, okay? And so what we do as a society is we said, hey, alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, those are addictive. It's very bad to have adolescents doing it. So what do? We restrict the age limit because we know there's bad effects. Social media, however, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 6-year-olds. I mean, come on, right? And so essentially what we do is, hey, you're having a bad day? Here, have a beer. 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old. Trigger that dopamine to make you forget it. Uh-oh. We're already in deep water, okay? And so an entire generation now, my generation, we kind of walked into the internet a little bit, like we kind of was there, and it was, that whole thing. And now it's, pull it out. Here's the internet, right? You don't even have to be like, Mom, get off the phone. I'm trying to, remember those days? Anybody remember those days? Those were fun. All right, so this generation has had this highly addictive chemical going through their brains. A response to anxiety, a response to chaos, a response to dysfunction is to go get a hit of dopamine. And they're learning it at 13. They're learning it at 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 22, and then they're 25, and they're like, why am I addicted to social media? Why am I running to it? Why haven't I made any real connections? All right? And so this this addictive chemical, it's been a response to these things. And so most alcoholics, if you study alcoholism, most of them start drinking when they're adolescents. It's learned at a young age, okay? So when a child is born and child grows up, they first seek approval from their parents, and that's in their younger years, okay? But as they switch to adolescence, what they do is they take that approval from their parents, and any parent here knows this. It goes from parents to peers. And it's like, no, right? But their approval and acceptance to kind of leave the nest is to take their approval. They're looking for approval from the parents, and now it shifts to their peers. And that's literally one of the most stressful situations in anybody's life. That's where bullying happens and all these other things happen. And so they're trying to figure this out, but in the meantime, they're getting hits. Where they should be adjusting socially, they're getting hits of dopamine instead. They're running to their phone, they're running to their game, they're running to whatever. And they're not socially assimilating. Are you following me so far? Okay, I promise we're getting to the Bible soon. And so they lack social skills. All right? They're already addicted, just like alcohol, and it becomes hardwired in their mind. So whenever social stress happens as an adolescent, they turn to this, but then as an adult, they keep doing it. And it's ruining people's social lives all over the place. And so, and I did a study here not too long ago where we talked about the greatest fears of grade school kids. And it shifted from like not trying to have fun to fear of the future. Okay? Went from trying to find things to have fun, that was the number one concern, to fear of the future. That's a pretty big jump. That was in less than, I think it was 10 years, something like that. It was 10 years. That's a pretty big jump. And what crept up on the list were things like school shootings and other things too, as opposed to school lunches being bad. Okay, big jumps. All right, and so all these kids, they're running around with this stuff, and they don't have these social skills, and they never practice this skill set. They don't have coping mechanisms to deal with stress. They aren't turning to people, and they're most certainly not turning to God. Okay? They're turning to devices. I feel like some pastor will be like, the devices are the devil, right? But because they both start with D and N. All right, anyways, but so this is going on, and this is this culture, all right? And they're being bombarded with social media, all right, and bombarded with peer. It's weird because it's more peer pressure in a way. Everything's going at breakneck speeds. Everything's on demand. Everything needs to be, you need to be this, that, and the other thing. And at school, if anybody's studied bullying and other things, it's on the rise. Everything's kind of chaos. And they're holding all this, okay, the younger generations. And not to say that other generations haven't held their fair share, but they're holding all this stuff. And what does the church do? Hey, here, let's add some more onto that, but it's Christian stuff this time. Here's a self-help book. Here's 30 minutes of prayer. Here's an hour of worship that you need to add into your schedule. Here's this, and this will fix it. And they're like, help? I have too much stuff. All right? And so the generation, I would say, is exceeding the weight limit to cross the bridge of life, and the church predominantly has said, here's more stuff. And it's like, it just weighs, it's more. And so that's why today's sermon that I bring in is going to be called addition by subtraction. How do you, all you math geniuses in here, how do you add by subtraction?
Give it away.
All right. Daniel, come on, math genius, aerospace engineer Daniel. It's very simple. You subtract a negative. Good job, Daniel. All right. You subtract negatives. Not add more stuff, but you subtract the negatives. And so if we could put that list up there one more time. Oh, yeah, come on, somebody. All right. We want to add this stuff, but there's two in here that specifically talk about taking stuff away. Okay? And I asked Brad to sing Heart of Worship this morning because of this. Stripping away all the excess. Millennials are coming in like, dear God, help me get rid of this. I don't need you to try to sell me your book. Oh, that's a bad thing. Pastor Dave wrote a book, by the way. It's not. But he did write a book. I just remembered. I was like, oh, you don't want to say that right when the pastor's like, I made a book. But when I'm talking about you go to a convention and the way, I'm drowning, okay? And so there's two I want to talk about today. And I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time on either one of them. But first one is simplicity. All right? The discipline of simplicity in the church. All right? And this is from the Jerusalem Bible translation. But God made man simple. Man's complex problems are of his own devising. Simplicity is a lost art, especially in the American church with a bunch of people listening to the American dream. And I hate to say it. I know it's not preached about because people don't like to kick that, but stir up the hornet's nest. But consumerism and materialism has no place in Christ's body. It's all frivolous, it's all extra, it's all unneeded, and it brings stress and anxiety in a place where Christ is trying to bring freedom. All right? And I don't need to stretch too far to really bring this forward, and I think most people can understand it. But in the chaos, complexity, technology, business, advanced education, loans, people constantly enthralled in chaos, anxiety is extremely high. Okay? And this is not just me, this is medical studies. The anxiety is absurd right now. All right? And Christians themselves are busy. All right? And the answer is always, again, self-help books and this and that. But I wonder, when someone has gotten all that stuff that they're so busy trying to maintain, and then they try to go to church, and they're like, Jesus, listen, I have this house and that other side thing, and I have 3 cars, and I have this, and I have that, and I have all this, but I've also been going to church, and I know all your commandments, and I even keep all your commandments. I'm being the best I could possibly be. What does Jesus say? Oh, Johnny Walker is paying attention. Oh, sell it all and follow me. In fact, he says sell it all to the poor. Okay? Give it up. It's in the way. You can't keep all that stuff and follow me. Okay? And I'm not, nobody go out and sell all your stuff right now. Let's continue on. So this is the principle of the rich young ruler in the story. It's the same thing. He comes to Jesus. He's like, hey, I got it all. I got all this stuff, and I'm doing all this Christian stuff. Well, sorry, it wasn't Christian stuff at the time. Jewish stuff. I'm doing all this too. And Jesus is like, yeah, all that stuff, get rid of it. Get rid of it and follow me. Because and what happens? The rich young ruler walks away sad, for he had many things. Materialism, consumerism. If we don't let it go, it eventually keeps us away from Jesus. Okay? And we could just talk about finances, that being true. I wish I could do that, but I can't because Hey, I'm preaching to myself, so don't worry. All right, like it's difficult, right? You have, I gotta pay for this, I finance that, I gotta do this, I gotta that, and suddenly it's like I can't go on a mission trip. Gotta work. I can't help them out because I got too much. You see what I'm saying? I don't mean to. We'll get there. Matthew 6. I'll bring Matthew 6 up. Watch me bring a scripture up. That'll be good. All right, we'll finally get there. All right, Matthew 6:25. Jesus says this. Therefore I tell you, we got it? Yeah. Okay. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? I love that line, by the way. Every time it's like, can you add a single hour by worrying? Like that's so good. And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today here today, and tomorrow is thrown into a fire. Sorry, I'm trying to follow my finger. All right. Will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things. Oh boy. And your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given unto you. Okay, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? What shall we post? What shall we show? What meal should we show? We just went to Chili's. We got to take a picture and show the meal, because that's people's things now. They got to show their meals. I never understood that. Not ever once I ever understood that thing. But it's no offense. But all these things, Jesus is saying, stop. Seek first his kingdom. Then this other stuff, okay? This other stuff's fine. But first, seek his kingdom. All right? Money, this is kind of I guess it would be a quote, but money or things becomes our point of idolatry the second it takes precedent over seeking the kingdom. The second things or money or fame or popularity take precedent in our lives, that's when we enter in idolatry. We put something before God and his kingdom. That's what idolatry is. You know, people are like, well, I'm not worshiping a golden calf. Like, all right, but you're worshiping the Golden State Warriors. Well, sorry. I better not do that. Sore subject, anyways. All right, but I want to bring a quote from actually a textbook. Ironically enough, bring a quote from a textbook that I had in school about simplicity. All right, simplicity is the only thing that sufficiently reorients our lives so that possessions can be genuinely enjoyed without destroying us. Without simplicity, we will either capitulate to the mammon spirit, and that's kind of the spirit of stuff, getting more, okay? Mammon spirit of this present evil age, where we'll fall into an unchristian, legalistic asceticism, which is becoming so legalistic about this, you don't own a single thing and you live in a dirt hut and you're like, I am worshiping God this way, right? Okay? Both lead to idolatry. Both are spiritually lethal. I think that's fantastic to keep in mind for this generation. With all the stuff being thrown at them, with advertisements, with Amazon being right there at the door. It's so much. It's so much. Things have never been easier to get. You can literally sit in your bed and not get up and press some buttons. And there it is. In a day. There's your Bowflex. Maybe you'll get up now. But freedom from anxiety, and this is just some other things, freedom from anxiety is characterized by these attitudes, and these are Christian attitudes that we were meant to have, okay? And that is that we received as a gift. And if what we have is to be cared for by God, and what we have is available to others, then we will possess freedom from anxiety. And this is the inward reality of simplicity. Essentially, all we have is a gift. It's to be shared, it's God, it's freely given, and it's accessible to everybody. If resources were accessible by everybody and they were unlimited, we wouldn't have had a lot of the wars we had in our culture, or in our world, actually. We wouldn't have had the disputes. If oil, first of all, if gas would be nearly free, but if oil just kept showing up, never ending, there wouldn't have been sort of specific wars. There wouldn't have been conflict. There wouldn't have been even trade wars and other things going on. Right? And the gas prices, again, would be great, right? And so, but if we believe that what we have, we've gotten, and if what we have, we believe we must hold on to and keep, and if what we have is not available to others, then we start living in anxiety. All right? And the idea of simplicity is to get rid of that feeling that you need to have, you need to hold on to, you can't let other people have, it's a rare thing, and you need to fill your life up with all these extra things. And I think the millennial generation is like, please somebody tell me to get rid of all this stuff. Please somebody tell me I don't need to live up to everyone's expectations. I don't need to have a house that looks like it's on Pinterest. Somebody help me. Or a wedding, ladies. I don't need to have a Pinterest. Okay, well, maybe you do because it's a wedding. But my point being, this simplicity, discipline is lost in the church overall. And it should be one of the, I think in this generation, it's one that they're really looking for. It's addition by subtraction. It's taking things away so that they become closer to God. It's saying, I need to get some things out so I can have more life. I have more when I have less. It's crazy. And this isn't the only time this principle works with Jesus, by the way. You can see when he talks about giving. It's the same principle. Wait, less is more? How does this work? Right? And so that I want to end this one with this idea I heard from actually from Andy Stanley. But he talked about money. And Janet, you actually know this one, but I won't make you say it in front of everybody. But we use money to buy stuff a lot. We think about it in terms of stuff. And one of the things he suggested is instead of using money for stuff, use it to make stories. Think of your money as an engine or as a vehicle to make stories in your life. Because when you talk to 90-year-olds about what they regret or what they remember most fondly, it's the stories. It's that vacation they took at Niagara Falls. It's their honeymoon. It's when their kids first did this thing. It's when their kid won that baseball game, almost single-handedly. It's like, yeah, it was awesome. The stories. I don't remember the stuff I had. And you ask somebody that's got a terminal disease what they want to do. None of them are like, you know what I want? A flat screen. They're like, can we go to this place? Can I see this person? Make-A-Wish Foundation. It solely exists out of this. Let's do something. Let's make something happen for them, right? And so when we live in that sense of simplicity, we're not bogged down by everything else. That is the kind of lifestyle we're looking for. Hey, you know what? I could buy that whatever thing, or I could become completely bogged down, or I could leave my money to make some stories with people. Understand? I don't want to drive on this too long. All right, we're doing good though. All right. The second discipline that I want to talk about today. Brad cheated. No, solitude. And I would argue silence is kind of in the same. It's probably interchangeable in some ways. Silence and solitude. Again, addition by subtraction. Now, instead of removing things, we're talking about removing yourself. Okay? And I think this is extremely, extremely important to this generation. All right? In a generation that's spiraling out of control, stripping down the excess stuff will help with the outward experience, but stripping down yourself, all the chaos, and bringing it all to a halt and looking at yourself, self-reflection. That's going to help in the inward understanding of the disciplines of the Christianity. All right. So again, simplicity removes the chaos around you. Solitude, it gets the chaos within you. It's when you finally acknowledge some of this stuff. All right. And why I think this is so important is because I think almost overall this generation is terrified of the silence. They've never had to live in it. Do you agree? Roberta, do you agree? Okay. I mean, you're plugged in. Adult and even adults now, they're like, wait, I am too. Oh no, right? And I always make this, and sorry for the crude illustration, but when you got to go to the bathroom, you used to just go to the bathroom. Now it's like, where's my phone? The people that just laughed, they are guilty. And you know it's true. It's like, I couldn't possibly sit there for a couple minutes and not be connected. It's, hit me up, social media. Oh, I probably shouldn't do that. Erase that clip. But I think they're terrified of the silence because they've never had to live in it. They run around with their headphones on. They're plugged in. They're in the car. They're plugged in. They're at school. They're still plugged in, but down here. Come on. By the way, anybody who's in school, it's so obvious. The teacher just doesn't feel like dealing with it. Okay? It's so obvious. Nobody actually sits there and is like, in class. You're very obvious. But they're like, I've already addressed this like 8 times. I don't feel like it anymore, whatever. Just so you know, because I'm a youth pastor and I watch. Okay, but there's a song that I wanted to do a while ago or talk about a while ago. No, not yet, Sharon. Sorry, she was ready, man. She was like, ooh. But there's a song by a secular band that I was going to bring up a long time ago, but it fits in this illustration very well. And it's a song called Car Radio. And it's by 21 Pilots. They're a secular, mainstream, very popular band. You've probably heard at least one of their songs. And they wrote a song called Car Radio, and the song is about a guy who gets his car radio stolen. And he has to drive in silence. And these guys they're pretty edgy with their lyrics. But I want to read what a secular band expresses about having to live in silence, okay? Or I guess I should say secular songwriter, but whatever. All right? He says, sometimes quiet is violent. I find it hard to hide it. My pride is no longer inside. It's on my sleeve. My skin will scream, reminding me of who I killed inside my dream. I hate this car that I'm driving. There is no hiding from me. I'm forced to deal with what I feel. There is no distraction to mask what is real. I could pull the steering wheel. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought because somebody stole my car radio. People that know this song are like, yeah. But now I just sit in silence. And he goes on. All right? I ponder of something, and this is so appropriate to what we're talking about. I ponder of something terrifying. Because this time there's no sound to hide behind. I find over the course of our human existence, one thing consists of consistence. And it's that we're all battling fear. Oh dear, I don't know, I even know if we know why we're here. Oh my, too deep, please stop thinking. I liked it better when my car had sound. There are things we can do, but from the things that work, there are only 2. And from the 2 we choose to do, peace will win and fear will lose. And it's faith and there's sleep. And we need to pick one, please, because faith is to be awake, and to be awake is for us to think, and for us to think is to be alive. And I will try with every rhyme to come across like I am dying to let you know you need to try to think. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought because somebody stole my car radio, and now I just sit in silence. Whew. That's the pulse of this generation. Oh, please no. Please no. They're okay with arguing with anybody in the world on Facebook. They're okay with watching any controversial stuff. But the second you put them in the room with themselves, it's the most terrifying thing. And some of you are the same way. Just different distractions. All right? And in fact, I think there are some people that are so about, I better be careful with this, but so about worship and prayer and service and serving, but all they're doing is running away from themselves. Anything but having to self-reflect. I'll be the greeter. No offense, greeters. Sorry. I'll be this, I'll serve, I'll do, but please, oh God, please, don't make me stop and be by myself. Okay? And so, the person in the mirror becomes the most terrifying person to them. But this is where self-reflection happens. Okay? This is why it's so terrifying, because it's the truth. And you know the truth is going to come out. And that's the most terrifying thing. The most offensive thing in the world is the truth. Nothing is more offensive than truth. A lie is not offensive because it's not true. Right? You understand? Like, you can't be, Johnny Walker, your hair is so ridiculous because it's purple. I'm not offended by that. Like, it's not purple. Hello? Right? It's not offensive. But when someone starts talking about what's true about you, when it hits that nerve and you know it's been there, just churning in your mind on a rotisserie, right? And you're like, someone gets you with it, and you're like, you blow up. It's there, okay? And those thoughts that come in, you could have done better. You could be doing better now. You could wake up earlier. That's for me. All right. You could have prepared better. You could have helped in that situation. You lied about being busy. You shouldn't have said that to that person. You knew what they were going through. You betrayed your friend. And I'm not talking about the devil talking about lies about us. I'm talking about the truth that the Holy Spirit brings. The devil brings in lies. You'll never be that. You'll never do that. First of all, devil, you can't tell the future, so whatever. But second of all, that's all hypothetical stuff or lies. But when it's the truth, that's when the Holy Spirit's trying to speak to us. I think sometimes we try to cancel out the Holy Spirit because it's confrontational. We're like, no, I don't want that confrontation. Don't tell me I need to do better. I know I need to do better, but don't tell me. And so when we talk about Jesus, when we talk about him and his ministry, what is the first thing Jesus does after he launches his ministry? Walks into the wilderness. For 40 days, he goes and he seeks silence and solitude. For 40 days. That's Matthew 4. You can read about it. He does that. And we're like, I can't take 4 minutes. And those of you with either grandkids or kids that are young, you get in the car. It's 30 seconds. Mom, that's my phone. Mom, turn that on. Right. It's right there. Anyways, all right. Before he chooses the 12 disciples, before he's about to pick his 12 people he's going to do life with in Luke 6, he spends time alone in silence. Okay? When he heard about John the Baptist's death, he withdrew. He pulled away. And he keeps pulling away. Every big moment, every significant thing, Jesus pulls away. He seeks himself and quietness and time with God. All the way up until the last time in the Garden of Gethsemane. He does it again. Here he's about to do the single greatest thing of all time. What does he do? He pulls himself away. He's praying alone. And then he gets mad because the disciples fall asleep. But this is going on. And Jesus is like, I need to pull myself away. I need to take care of myself. I need to watch myself. And you can't do that connected. You can't do it. It's literally an addiction and a distraction to get away from that. And the church doesn't always talk about this. I know we say, stop doing social media, but why? But is there really some truth in there? And there is, and these are Christian disciplines that as a Christian, a young Christian, these are the things we should be practicing, because these are the things that are, this is the big issues in Christianity right now for young people. This is what's consuming them. You need to fight the enemy that's at the front door. If there's an enemy right outside the gates and you're planning for an enemy that's coming next week, you might not make it to next week. You understand? And so that's why I'm talking about this message. In the let me quote Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I like this quote a lot. All right, I'm going to quote one more quote for you. Okay, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Do we have it? There he is. Let him who cannot be alone beware of community. Let him who is not in community beware of being alone. Each by itself has profound pitfalls and perils. One who wants, listen to this sentence, and take one and say society, a society, all right? One who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into a void of words and feelings. I'll say it again. A society who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into a void of words and feelings. Boy, that sounds like something familiar. And then he goes on, he says, and one who seeks solitude without fellowship perishes in the abyss of vanity, self-infatuation, and despair. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he's pretty cool. I remember we did that thing here a while ago about him, but he keeps popping up everywhere I'm looking. I'm like, man, he's got some good stuff. But that right there, wow. A culture that is unable or incapable of really leaving the fellowship realm and finding solitude becomes a culture of just words and feelings, words and feelings, words and feelings, words and feelings. That's literally all we talk about in social platforms anymore. This made me feel upset. I didn't like what they said. I didn't like those words. They need to change those words. They need to do different words. That's this. This guy was right, really right, a long time before social media happened, okay? And so solitude and silence, again, they're interwoven. In Ecclesiastes 3, I don't have to bring this up, but Ecclesiastes 3, where there's a time for this and there's a time for that, it says there's a time for silence and there's a time to speak. Everything in balance, right? We don't want to become super legalistic and jump down in this and be like, I will not speak for 100 days. And I'll hold a piece of, listen, I went to Christian college, so I know. All right, some of you don't know, but I'm going to hold a sign that says, I'm taking a vow of silence. And I'm going to hold it up to anybody who has to talk to me. Not to say there's nothing wrong with taking a vow of silence, but it's it gets a little crazy with some people, okay? And so, because he says there's a time to speak too, a time to tweet, I guess. All right, Jesus didn't say that. All right, so I'm convinced that we're always trying to preach and tell people what they really need, and instead, maybe we should shut up because it's already in them. I think a lot of people know their problems. I think a lot of people know their sins. And I don't think they need someone else to tell them their sins. I think they need someone else to tell them, hey, why don't you stop distracting yourself and deal with it? Why don't you stop distracting yourself and look at yourself and then ask God for help, because we all need it. Because I think that's the truth. I think a lot of younger people, they know they're just filling the voids. They know they're just distracting themselves from contemplating their true inner flaws and their darkness. And they know if they were to let themselves actually look at themselves and be alone with themselves, they'd be like, oh God, I need you now. Help. They'd be running to the gospel if they would take some moment and look at themselves. And they don't need a preacher or a Christian to you do this and you do that. They just need a moment to really reflect on themselves. I don't think anybody needs to tell you. I guarantee you, 100% guarantee you that everybody in this room, if we were to take another person in this room and say, hey, write down all their flaws. Okay? So we're just going to use, for example, Brad, because Brad's easygoing and all right, I'm not scared that he's going to be like, Arr! But if Brad, I'm like, all right, so we're going to have someone else write down all the flaws for you. Okay, that would not be fun, first of all. But I guarantee you, Brad, well, yeah, let's not use a wife. But I guarantee you could write a bigger list than anybody else. I guarantee we all could. We know more problems than ourselves because we haven't said some of them. We haven't let them out of the bag. And so, all this is going on, and I know that people feel it looming in their hearts, even though they're distracting themselves, okay? But we're determined, again, to talk away why people need to change their lifestyle and stuff, but I don't know if they necessarily need to be told that. I think they know that. I think they just need time to express it, all right? And honestly, the greatest moments I've ever seen in church have not been during preaching. It's not the call that has drawn the greatest moments in churches, it's the responses for a call and response. It's when everything stops and God moves. I've seen it so many times, not so many times, but I've seen it enough to know that's what happens. God starts moving because nobody's talking at them anymore. And they're realizing something on their own, and it's so much more impactful. Okay, and so I'm closing up now. So we're good. I'm doing good. I'm like always way before 12. That's my goal. All right. So the question then becomes, what about you? That's how I like to try to end every sermon. What about you? Where are you at? Yikes. Well, no, I like talking about the younger people. That was more fun. Let's talk about what they need, not what I need, right? But what about you? Where do you sit in solitude? In how much time you spend alone? Or simplicity? How many things are just coming at you and you're just trying to dodge bullets left and right? And you're like, oh God, please. I wish it was more simple. I wish I could just get rid of some of this excess responsibly. Not, just, I'm not going to pay my loans back now. But that's not what I meant. But what is it? What about you? What about you in your life? What are you doing? Okay? Because the culture that we live in, it's not just exclusive to younger people. It's all over the place, okay? And it's knocking at all of our doors. Have you been trying to get things out of the way to serve the kingdom of heaven? Or have more things been getting in the way to serve the kingdom of heaven? Yikes. Self-reflection. We don't like this part, remember? Are you afraid to face yourself? Admitting the feelings that are lacking so God can finally embrace you in those areas? Where are you at? And that's for everybody. Where are you at in that moment? Are you someone who spends time with themselves and knows what they need to do, knows where they're at internally, emotionally, mentally, what they need to work on, or are you just kind of hoping that things work out? Seems an awful big deal to gamble your life by chance, which is a method that has been adopted by younger people, by the way. Essentially, all of this, addition by subtraction, can be condensed down to one understanding and one principle that Jesus brought, and that's pruning. Pruning. You cut a plant so that it grows more. You add on by taking away. Jesus is he talked about this several times. But this idea of pruning is what is contained in simplicity. It's what's contained in solitude and silence. It's stripping away some things so that you can grow more. And I think everybody, personally, everybody has things they know, I need to chill. I need to stop. Like, I'm literally, my whole Sunday is I go to church and I go home and I watch football from the time I get home, when it's on, till it's over, and I don't even care about any single one of the teams playing today. I don't even care about them, all right? Why am I watching it? Why am I consumed by it? Why don't I take a moment and go for a walk? Whoa. Some of the greatest, I'll tell you, this is a little sidebar, but experiencing God in this church, I'll tell you where I've experienced God the most. At this church. Outback. I have walked out back several times. It's quiet. There's nobody. It's silent, and I felt the presence of God just go right there. Here I am. And I'm like, but you should be in the church, right? Oh, no, you've entered into a place of solitude and a place of silence. It helps that there's like deer back there and birds and everything else. But the idea is God is there when we pull ourselves away and get ourselves out of the chaos, okay? And so I want to end today doing something a little different. I have a song. You can get that ready. But I want to challenge you. Anybody in the room who's feeling like they're overburdened or they need to lay some things down, add on to their lives by subtracting some things. And who maybe some of you feel like you kind of need to walk in a little bit of repentance, take some things away, a lot, or a lot of repentance. And just, I want to call us to the altar today a little bit. And the altar, I know it's often used for like physical sickness and we bring people up, but ultimately the altar was a place for sacrifices. And you are the greatest sacrifice you can make, right? You are all you can give, really, to God. What do you have to offer to God that he doesn't already have? The only thing is you. And I think that we forget that sometimes. And like I said, I love the song that we sang earlier, Heart of Worship. I was like, that's such a good one. You know, when the music fades and all is stripped away. And I simply come. Right? I simply come. So I want to challenge anybody who feels like they, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you what to say or anything like that, but just wants to take a moment with God. I'm not going to be talking. I'm going to play a song. And if you feel like it throughout the song, I want you to come up and just kind of make a symbolic, like a baptism is symbolic to an interchange. Make a symbolic gesture and say, God, help. All right? Okay, are we cool with that? I don't think pastors are supposed to say that when it comes to altar call. You cool with that? But I'm going to play a song, and it's called Clear the Stage. And it's very relevant to what we're talking about. So we're going to enter this moment of prayer. And anybody that comes up here, if you're not coming up here and you're like, I'm doing okay, you know, pray for them. Pray for them from your seat. You don't have to come up and like face palm them. But I think this is extremely important. And keep this in mind when you think of the younger generation. Hey, you know what? Let me stop trying to throw more stuff at them. Have you thought about pulling some stuff away? And not just taking it away for religious sakes, but taking it away because it's going to help you. It's going to add. I'm going to take something. This is Jesus' principle. I'm going to take something away, and it's going to make more of you. It's crazy. Jesus always brings these principles up that seem counterintuitive. So I'm going to make an altar call. Anybody who wants to come up to make a declaration, or just spend a moment with God alone for a second, okay? The altar's open, and so you can go ahead and play the music, and I am going to sit here and just pray silently for everybody for a couple